So it's week 13. We've almost made it through the entire semester, and I hope everybody's doing very well. I realize this is a tremendously busy time of year for everybody, not the least of which in terms of school. I realize that folks have all sorts of different types of engagements going on. So I think it's really great in some ways that this course is really strongly front-loaded, because now you're primarily going to be working on finishing the final major assignment of the class. And so I think you'll find the final 2 weeks of the course not necessarily easy, but a little bit more free form. So I just want to give you kind of a heads up about where we're at, where we're headed. So as you know, you're waiting for grades from me, and I'll be sure to get those to you as quickly as possible. As you can probably imagine, it's a pretty time-intensive operation to grade at any given time 75 assignments. So, but your class is next on my priority list, and once I get going on those, I should be able to get those back to you in short order. And that should give you a pretty good sense of where you're at in the course. So the final assignment of the semester is really a capstone assignment, and it really asks you to do a lot of things really well. And as you probably will note as you read the assignment sheet, you're being asked to basically solve a problem for a reader, and to use your expertise in a particular area to make a purchasing decision in most cases. And so I've given you an array of options or scenarios that you can respond to, and you are certainly free to use those. You're also free to make up your own scenario if you'd like. And so what this assignment is really going to require you to do is not only research and get really good information upon which you're going to make a decision, but also it's going to require you to think really carefully about how to present this information to an audience that in many cases doesn't really know what you're talking about. So just using scenario number 1 as an example, you're writing to a superintendent of schools who admittedly doesn't know very much about technology, but does know a lot and cares a lot about student safety and success in the classroom. And so when you're writing about tablets, it would be really easy to fixate on the technical specifications, things like RAM and storage capacity and screen size and battery life and all these various types of quantitative or measurable things. And that's fine. Those things are certainly important, and they're going to play a significant role in the decision that you make. What's most important, though, is that you explain the significance or the value of those things to your readers. So, for instance, a superintendent probably doesn't necessarily know the difference between something that has, 32 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of RAM. But when you explain it in terms that they understand, they're probably going to find that to be a lot more meaningful. So, for instance, you may explain that more RAM means faster startups, greater ability to multitask, the ability to run certain types of programs, etc. And all of those things have a lot to do with education. So I really want you to be mindful of that a lot of what you're going to be writing about is not self-explanatory, and that you're going to have to connect the dots for the reader and explain why some of the criteria that you're looking at matter. And so that's a fundamental part of this assignment. The other thing is just thinking about how you want to present all of this information so that the reader can see and make comparisons for themselves. And so this is really going to challenge you to think about how to use the space of the page. And this is not uncommon. Whether this is, reports are all fundamentally the same. To report something means to present information. And so whether this is a financial report or an incident report, you really have to think carefully about the way in which you want to present your information, the way you want to break it up, and those types of things. And so I'm not going to give you really any hard and fast rules about how to do that. I want to see you be innovative. I want you to solve the problem yourself, to come up with what you think is the best solution. But I will show you some examples that you may be able to get some inspiration from. And so I want you to think primarily about the user or the reader's experience of this document and their ability to really see how these various options stack up against one another. And so that's a fundamental requirement. So really built into this assignment, we have sort of a series of mini technical reviews. In some ways we have a series of fact sheets which kind of present information really quickly and efficiently. You're going to have to be super mindful of your language. You're going to have to avoid jargon, obviously. You're going to have to write confidently and precisely about things. And so that's why this is our capstone assignment. It's because it has a lot of moving pieces. Of course, you're going to have to research and find and present really good information. And in a lot of ways, the success of this assignment really rests on your ability to analyze and understand your audience. And that's why this week we're starting with an audience analysis assignment where I'm going to ask you to think really carefully about what your particular audience's dispositions will be. What types of things do they care about? What are their needs? What are their expectations? What might they value the most? So, it's really easy to think about this in the following way. It would be easy to think that all criteria are weighted equally and created equally. That, when we're looking at a tablet, for instance, that screen size matters the same as RAM, matters the same as safety, matters the same as the availability of teaching and learning apps, for instance. But we know in reality those things are not weighted equally. And that there are certain things that matter above all else. And in a lot of cases, price matters a great deal. In some cases, efficiency matters, or whatever. So part of what you're going to have to also consider and wrap your mind around is how to weight your criteria. So how to establish which ones are of the greatest value or the greatest importance, and which ones are, of course, of lesser importance. And so there's a lot that you're going to have to sort of think about and weigh in your mind. And so I think the audience analysis is a really smart way to start, because it'll force you to start prioritizing what you think your reader is the most concerned about. So I also want to applaud you folks. The email assignment that you folks did really exceeded my expectations. I was, imagining that, folks might struggle with that a little bit, but man, if your fact sheets are half as good as the emails that you sent, everybody's going to do very well on those, because you guys did a really nice job of using innovative formatting strategies, really great headings, use of lists and hyperlinks and those types of things, generally speaking, to make your emails really readable. And frankly, I wish some other people on the campus would have seen those, because there's a lot that we can learn from the way that you guys wrote those emails, all the way down to the subject lines, which for the most part were really engaging, really helpful, and really did a nice job of forecasting the content of the email. So as we move forward, it's really important for you to stay up with the work. We're going to kind of take the recommendation report a step at a time. And so we're going to really start thinking about our audience. And I want you to spend a lot of time. This is going to be an important assignment for you. And I think the folks who spend a significant amount of time thinking about their audience are probably going to be the students that succeed the most on this assignment, frankly, because everything that you do in this assignment ultimately has to be filtered through the lens of your audience. And that's going to dictate the order in which you present material, the amount of time you spend discussing various types of material. Everything is really predicated on your audience in this case. So if you haven't already, make sure you read the digital textbook chapter that I posted in week 12. That'll give you some tips and some strategies about possibly how to organize your information. And I think that you'll find that gives you some good ways of thinking about the assignment, especially when you're comparing options. So let's get after it. Let's have a really good final end of the semester. I'm going to follow up later in the week with another mini lecture that's a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more granular, where I'm going to walk you through a couple of sample documents and talk to you about what I'm observing and what I'm thinking. So it'll be a walkthrough type experience. But sure, if you need anything at all, make sure that you call, text, email. Make sure that I know how you're doing. One of the big problems with an online class is that I can't see your looks of consternation. I can't see when I'm doing something or saying something that's not making sense. So it's really important for you to reach out to me and let me know those types of things. But for those of you who are diligently and reliably doing the work, keep up the good work. You guys are going to be very happy, I think, with where you end up in this semester. And for those of you who are a little bit behind, there's still time. Okay, so make sure that you try your best. Thanks.